Welcome to Asian ID. In today's short drama industry, audiences often claim they only care about storylines, pacing, and emotional payoff. Yet why do so many people still click reserve for a drama before even reading the synopsis? Perhaps the answer has never been hidden inside the script alone, because modern viewers are no longer merely chasing stories, but chasing the emotional certainty attached to particular actor pairings, aren't they? That is exactly why the rise of Hae-in and Karen feels less like an accident and more like a textbook example of how the short drama market is quietly rewriting its own survival rules, doesn't it? Ironically, the two were not even arranged as the main romantic pairing in the original drama that sparked their popularity, because Hae-in was initially paired with Yuhang in a cheerful enemies to lovers dynamic, while Tan Yan and Karen carried the colder CEO-style romance line. Yet audiences still forcefully pushed Hae-in and Karen's interactions into viral territory across the internet, and doesn't that reveal something fascinating about viewer instincts? Sometimes viewers do not fall for the pairing producers deliberately promote, because chemistry is one of the few things audiences can sense almost immediately without explanation, and can manufactured marketing ever completely overpower natural emotional tension? Clips of the two circulating online rapidly exploded in popularity, with some viewers even describing the pairing as more handsome than K-chun and more serious than Wang Hae-osun, which sounds exaggerated on the surface. Yet doesn't exaggeration itself often reveal genuine emotional excitement? Then came, and suddenly the market delivered a brutally direct answer about how powerful fan attachment truly is, because the reservation count surged past 2.23 million before release, and in an industry overflowing with new dramas every single week, isn't pre-release attention already half the battle won? The drama itself follows a familiar emotional formula adapted from the tomato novel Wild Lotus Thorn, telling the story of Yiying, a poor girl, and Shenk, an elite academic talent, who fall in love during high school only to separate because of their vastly different family backgrounds, before uniting 7 years later when she becomes a teacher and he returns from abroad to build a business. But haven't audiences always had a weakness for stories about love surviving time and regret on paper? This is classic broken mirror reunion plus mutual redemption storytelling, a formula the market has consumed repeatedly for years, yet the reservation numbers prove something important. Because audiences are not exhausted by old emotional structures themselves, but by emotionally empty execution, aren't they? The competition environment surrounding this drama makes those numbers even more revealing, because during the 2026 Spring Festival season alone, Red Fruit's short drama platform recorded more than 33.61 billion total views, over 1.28 billion viewing sessions, and more than 50 dramas fighting for attention simultaneously. So under such extreme competition, doesn't a 2.23 million reservation count suggest real audience anticipation rather than casual curiosity? Yet genre alone cannot explain this momentum fully, because if reunion romance were enough by itself, very similar drama would become a hit, and reality clearly shows that most disappear within days, doesn't it? The true core variable here is the CP effects surrounding Hae-in and Karen themselves, because audiences are no longer treating them as temporary O-stars, but increasingly as a stable emotional brand. And isn't branding the ultimate form of audience trust? Looking back at their collaboration history reveals how deliberately this emotional accumulation has evolved over time, because their first project already achieved a respectable 1.358 million observations, quietly laying the foundation for future audience attachment. Yet foundations alone rarely create explosions, do they? The real turning point arrived with, which launched on Red Fruit on February 14, 2026, surpassed 2.7 million reservations, crossed 1 billion views within 7 days, and eventually exceeded 2 billion total plays, turning the pairing from promising into a verified market phenomenon. And doesn't success repeated at that scale stop feeling accidental entirely? Karen's portrayal of Fujing's Zhai initially reshaped his audience image, because viewers labeled him with the increasingly popular term ultimate husband material, describing a man emotionally stable, attentive, restrained, and quietly dependable. And isn't modern romance increasingly obsessed with emotional safety rather than dominance alone? His character remembered menstrual cycles, cooked silently without seeking praise, appeared exactly when needed without becoming emotionally suffocating, and expressed affection more through action than speech, which sounds simple superficially, yet why do such details affect audiences so intensely today? Perhaps because contemporary urban viewers are exhausted by exaggerated toxic romance narratives and increasingly crave depictions of mature emotional reliability instead, And isn't emotional consistency becoming the rarest fantasy in modern relationships? This image fits Shinken while Lotus grows almost perfectly, because the once cold academic genius eventually transforms into someone capable of warmth, mysticity, and emotional responsibility, meaning the audience already subconsciously associates Karen with precisely that emotional archetype before the drama even begins. Doesn't it? In other words, Day and Night did more than create CP fans, because it essentially pre-installed the audience's emotional expectations for Shank months in advance, functioning like psychological conditioning disguised as entertainment. And isn't that one of the smartest forms of actor branding possible? The speed of their repeated elaborations matters too, because within less than 3 months, Hae-in and Karen transitioned from a second collaboration into a third, allowing audience attachment to remain continuously active instead of fading naturally over time. And in today's attention economy, isn't continuity itself a weapon? Meanwhile, Hae-in maintained nearly non-stop exposure through live streams and additional collaborations with actors like Shen Hae-in and Zhang Huangming, constantly circulating through both filming sets and fan spaces without ISAPI rain from public visibility. And doesn't constant exposure strengthen emotional familiarity? Almost subconsciously, Karen's own momentum in 2026 became even more overwhelming, because by April he reportedly held 8 unreleased dramas with reservation counts all surpassing 1 million, while alone surged beyond 8.053 million reservations, and at that point, can audiences still separate the actor from the emotional comfort his image represents? This reflects a much larger transformation happening across the short drama industry itself, because viewers are increasingly no longer consuming isolated stories one by one, but following actor IPs capable of delivering consistent emotional experiences repeatedly. Aren't they? The logic resembles television stardom from earlier entertainment eras, except compressed into the hyper-accelerated ecosystem of short-form content, where audiences binge not simply because they love one specific plot, but because they trust a particular pairing to recreate a familiar emotional sensation. And isn't emotional predictability strangely comforting in chaotic times? This shift also explains why serialized IP-style operations are becoming more dominant industry-wide, because as the micro-drama market surpasses hundreds of billions in value and tens of thousands of productions flood platforms yearly, single project breakout success becomes increasingly unstable, doesn't it? Under such pressure, recognizable actor pairings function almost like risk control mechanisms for platforms and producers, reducing audience hesitation before release even begins. And when viewers already understand the chemistry, tone, and emotional rhythm attached to a pairing, doesn't the decision to click become almost automatic? That may be the real significance of Hae-in and Karen's third collaboration, because it lands precisely during the industry's transition from pure traffic chasing toward long-term emotional brand operation. And timing in entertainment has always mattered as much as talent itself, hasn't it? Of course. None of this guarantees that Wild Lotus Grows will immediately explode to 1 billion views within 3 days after release, because the market remains brutally unpredictable despite all calculations. Yet doesn't the 2.23 million reservation figure already reveal something undeniable? At least a massive portion of viewers clearly did not reserve the drama because of the synopsis alone, because before the first episode even aired, they had already emotionally decided they wanted to see these two faces together again, and in the end, isn't that the clearest proof that audiences are no longer merely following stories, but following emotional trust itself? Thank you for watching the video. See you again.